All right, peace, family. I'm live in the building with the brother Ashra Kwesi. Welcome to the back to the show, my brother.
Yes, sir. Honored to be back, brother. How's everything?
Everything's good. I'm glad to know you coming back to New York.
Yes,
Uh,
sir.
it's going to be a lecture that everybody's looking forward to. Let me just tell the people real quick. The brother will be in the building, National Black Theater, along with Sister Shahrazad Ali, and that's this Sunday, April 28th. They will be at the National Black Theater. For more information, you could contact King Simon, 347-496-1022. Also, if you want to see the live stream, you could go to www.usalivestream.com. Make sure you got this is a King Simon production. Make sure you contact the brother for additional information. Before we get to the show, let me play a few ads for the family. Let me let the family fill up the room. Let me see who's in here. Okay, I see the family with me right now. Okay. All right, we'll be back in 1 second, family. All right, family, we are now back. Welcome back, welcome back. Okay, so brother Ashra Kwesi, let me ask you, real quick, brother, how long have you been doing the tours and everything? How long have you been doing that?
Brother, it's 38 years, and can't believe
Yikes.
I'm going into 4 decades. But when you're doing something that you
That you love.
really love doing, brother, you're just in a time warp. You don't even realize that time until I'm editing a tape or something and see myself turn gray right in the tape.
Wow, brother, that's a blessing in the 38 years, man. That's amazing right there, man. That's truly
Well, I have
amazing.
to give honor to my teacher, peace be upon him, and may his spirit fly on the wings of Ra, and that's Dr. Ben, that we affectionately know him as Dr. Yosef Ben Yakinen. I started my journey with him back in 1981 when I first met him at Long Beach State back in 1973. And, of course, out there in L.A. fighting the Gestapo beast LAPD and being in the strong black power political movement at that time, we weren't getting a lot of our history and our black divinity. So Dr. Ben filled that in when he came to Long Beach State and lectured on it. And I said, Dr. Ben, can you prove this? He said, I can take you back and show you. So that's the first time someone told me that they could show me. So that was my dream at that point, and I made that journey with him in 1981, spent 14 years apprenticeship under him, and now 38 years nonstop. So, when you open up that ancestral genetic memory bank, that's what happens, brother.
Right. Wow, that's amazing. So let me ask you. They say that the attendance in the churches is declining. So do you see an increase if the attendance in the churches are declining? Do you see an increase with the tours that you're doing?
Well, it's going through its ups and downs, depending on what the political climate is in the world. We are a people who still live on the present plantation called America today. So sometimes, anything that happens, sometimes, we might not leave the country, even though you got more things going on here, and brothers and sisters who are dying every day by the white supremacy system. But yes, but the tours have, are definitely. In fact, we have 2 tours this summer. We have both 15 days from July 6th to the 20th, and July 20th to August 3rd, and they're both over 100. In fact, we're full right now. We can't even take any more people. So yes, so it's been every year we have more and more brothers and sisters who are interested in the tours, and of course, even going back with Dr. Ben, the tours have grown a lot, and depending on what the political climate is, the world sometimes it may take a decline. So fortunately, over the years, the tours, for the most part, we've done very well with them.
Dope. Now, your tours are absolutely amazing. If anybody who's been there, or if anybody who has seen footage of it, it's absolutely amazing. One thing I want to ask you about is that Egyptian archaeologists recently made a discovery in Egypt, where they found they give me a second. Oh, what's this? So I'm sorry, family. Where they found, I was trying to pull up something. Give me a second. I don't know why I keep doing this. I don't know why I keep doing that. Give me a second, family. Yeah, so there was a recent discovery made in Egypt, where there's like another tomb, a royal tomb, where they saying it's over 4,500 years old. I believe it's in Saqqara, an ancient city in Cairo, and it looks well preserved, brother. I mean, it looks beautiful. What's the first thing that comes to your mind when we keep hearing about these quote unquote new discoveries in Egypt, my brother?
Well, first of all, Europeans are always talking about how they discovered something like it wasn't there until
right.
they so-called discovered it. Well, first of all, National Geographic, they put out a few years back that every time they kick over a rock in Africa, they have to rewrite the textbooks. Mm. So again, this is not new. I mean, they're always finding, researching and plundering. That's what they're doing, plundering. They've been plundering Egypt for over 2,000 years now. Sacred sites and tombs, and we go to Saqqara. That was the place that you're mentioning. That's a very important site because that's the world's first stone building is built there in Saqqara, built by the Grand Master multi-genius Tajedi Imhotep. There he built the world's first stone building. Those of us who know him know he was the first physician, first astrophysicist, where he built that step pyramid, the first pyramid for his king Zoser-Neterket in the third dynastic period, the world's first golden age. And in that area is an area that has a lot of treasures there. And one of the most important that I take our group every year, not only to the Step Pyramid, but also to Unas and also Teti. Now, even though these pyramids are built in the 5th and 6th dynasty, they're dilapidated. They're not built on the level of the Great Pyramid of Khufu and the Giza Plateau or of the Step Pyramid. But what's important about this, Brother Rich, is the fact that down inside, they're actually writing. Here we see Teti and also Unas. They're writing about their salvation and resurrections. So in these great murs, that's what's called pyramid today. Pyramid is a Greek name, by the way. It means fire. Our ancestors called it, the structure is Merkunti. Mm-hmm. So there we see salvation and resurrection, where they're writing about this. Now, this is not the earliest text. They go back even further than that, but this is the first time we see it in stone of salvation and resurrection, which is the foundation of these various religions that we have today. So these are very important sites, and well as many of the other areas that we go to are absolutely mind-blowing, not to mention the Valley of the Kings, to go in there to see that they didn't have dynamite, cranes, and all this stuff. And that's why I like to come with visual documentation, so brothers and sisters can actually see this for those who haven't gone, to see just how powerful this is, because without it, what we know in these various religions today would not exist.
Indeed. When you hear or when you see everybody, Easter recently just passed this Sunday, and everybody was doing their not everybody, but a lot of our people were doing their Easter thing, celebrating the resurrection of Christ, and getting dressed up. What goes through your mind? Like, how is Easter related to some of our ancient spiritual systems, my brother?
Well, first of all, it's a very sad occasion especially when you know how this is a corruption of ancient African Kemetic spiritual science, that the Greeks, who were the first Europeans who came in and studied this first, going back first with Thales and Pythagoras and others, and then coming down into the conquerors like Alexander, who our children are taught to call the Great, who he got Aristotle to plunder this. So this is how they came up and studied the idea of the salvation and resurrection. But the Romans eventually, who came in and usurped it from the Greeks, They came in and studied the spiritual system of ancient Kemet and the Black Madonna that they worshipped as Isis. And then when the Byzantine Romans came in, this is when they were starting to formulate the Western version of Christianity. And in that formulation, they took the idea of the resurrection. But the Romans didn't understand the true spiritual idea of the resurrection. They took the body literally. When I'm in Kemet with our groups and we go into the Valley of the Kings and go into other areas, and I show them clearly, here our ancestors saw the Khat. The Khat was the physical body that we call the mummy today. The mummy did not resurrect and go into the afterlife. Here it was about the Sahu. The spiritual body is the body that rose up. So when you look at Raphael and Leonardo da Vinci and these European Christian artists and see, and I show this to our group over there, here we see the Ka. The Ka is the spirit. It's called the dancing Ka. When I take the pictures of the European Jesus resurrecting, have you ever seen the picture of the white Jesus with one leg down and one leg up with his two arms up in the air?
Right.
Okay, that's called the dancing Christ. Okay, but that idea was copied from the reliefs of the temple of the Perteta, or the Puras Het, or the divine house of Haru. There I put the pictures right up to the relief, and even Europeans who are walking by say, "Whoa, look at that. We're not getting that." I said, "No, you're not getting that, and you can't be in this group." But the point is the fact that this is where they copied these ideas into making a Western version of Christianity. So when you see that European Jesus wrapped up like a mummy, why is he wrapped up like a mummy? If you're going to go to heaven, and they said he physically rose up out the grave, just going up. All right? But that idea of the mummification of the body, the idea that the Romans took it literally, they didn't understand spiritual ideas. So this is where we see where the idea of the salvation and resurrection was taken from Kemet and corrupted. And even when we look at Judaism and the Passover, that's happened at the same time of Easter. We get caught into that. It had nothing about the Jews passing out of Egypt. It was about the sun passing over the equator. That's why they used the lamb or the ram, okay, that they used. It was called the angel of death and the sacrificing of the ram or the lamb. By the way, that the Dogon culture still sacrifice the lamb or the ram during the time of the spring solstice this very day. So this is a custom going back to ancient Kemet, and the Zoop type for that ram is the spiritual deity or god called Amun. All right, and the Zoop type for it was the ram. So these ideas were literally copied directly from ancient Kemet, and even though we end our prayers with Amun, we have no idea that the fact that the Greeks who took Amun up out of Africa, and then we see that the early Hebrews equally, who studied these spiritual systems, equally took Amun. And even though you look in the Bible dictionary, it says Amun is a Hebrew word. That is not a Hebrew word. That is an African deity, and Amun is jet black, by the way. And it's interesting that, well, we see today that they talk about dark matter, the invisible energy. Well, Amun represented the invisible spirit. And at the same time, in Timothy chapter 6, verse 16, it talks about whom no man has seen or can see, to whom be the honor and everlasting power. Amen. So again, we're just now starting to unlock ancient African spiritual science and ancient African spirituality. And that's why I refer to these temples, Brother Rich, as the books in stone, because they were there thousands of years before the Western world, and it'll be there thousands of years after the Western world. And as Dr. Ben told me years ago, I can take you back and show you. So I equally tell other brothers and sisters, as we have taken my Netter Hamptonite, that's my divine wife, Mary Kwesi. In fact, she's the business manager of Kemet Nu. We take brothers and sisters back for an eyewitness account. And the whole purpose and the objective is for a Kepara. What is a Kepara? A transformation, and above all, an emancipation of our mind today out of mental slavery. So again, we've got to unlock that ancestral genetic memory bank, and this ancient temples of right there in Kemet to see where all others came in. The original Taneder land. This is the original Taneder land, Brother Rich, or the original Holy Land. After all, from the biblical account, everybody's coming into Kemet. It is now called Egypt today. From the Greeks who crossed the burning sands, they're coming into Kemet in the northeast corner. So here again, this is where all the knowledge started, from that fallopian tube, from the Happy Valley, that 4,100 miles of the Nile. I know I said a lot there, my brother.
Nah, you said what you had to say. Definitely. We always hear about how advanced ancient Egypt, ancient Kemet was with the pyramids and everything, the spiritual system, and how the pyramids are aligned exactly to the stars. I mean, it's just mathematical genius. What I want to ask you about is the morality element in ancient Kemet, because we often look at Kemet and we want to model our culture after that. But some people feel as though ancient Kemet might have been advanced, but they were far from advanced when it came to morality. And in fact, the people we call the so-called Illuminati or the secret societies, all the sick-ish that they do, they model it after ancient Egypt, and they learned about keeping things in the bloodline and this all types of sexual craziness and rituals and sacrifices. They actually learned that from ancient Egypt. So how was ancient Kemet in terms of morality? Let's put the pyramids to the side.
First of all, just like the European Christians who came in and corrupted the ancient African spiritual system in the making of what we know as Western version of Christianity, whether that's the Byzantine Roman Christians, Catholicism, and Theodosian Justinian chiseling out the Madonna and Child, which is a set, and we see the Black Madonna is still there. We see that corruption, okay? So when we see these secret societies and everybody else today, and whether it's the Masonic orders and so forth, who equally copied, when we look at the making of America and look at the architectural structures of the Tekanus and George Washington Monument and all these things all around us. Kemet talks to us all the time. But we can't take their decadence, okay, that they have created, which is part of their innate culture, all right, is create a decadence and destruction, and then say that's what Kemet was all about, because that's what they did. When we look at the morality, now you spoke of morality, then what were we looking at? We're looking at Ma'at. And what is Ma'at? Ma'at represented a spiritual cosmic goddess, okay, a cosmic goddess that's representing what? Truth, justice, and righteousness, and above all, a spiritual dialectical laws of opposites. And the whole universe, as they saw in the spiritual dialectical laws of opposites. And when you go against that, this was referred to as Isfet, or evil, or chaos. So here we see the Western world in this evil and chaos going against that spiritual dialectical laws of opposites with homosexuality and everything else. And some people say, well, that was in Egypt. No, the Greeks were there for 300 years when they came in with the Ptolemies after Alexander's death. They took over the throne for 300 years. After them, the Romans, another 400 years. And the Byzantine Romans, we're talking about another 300 years. So we're talking about 1,000 years of these Europeans coming in, bringing their decadent behavior into ancient Kemet. So when we see today is the decadent behavior of the Europeans who have corrupted the spiritual system when we look at the whole spiritual system that our ancestors called Ma'at, and that's truth, justice, and righteousness. So again, when we look at the Illuminati and all these, Europeans and their secret societies, we got a big storm here, so I hope it doesn't affect the phone as I'm talking. So again, we can't look at Kemet and associate it with their decadence and what they have done with it, even though you see the Illuminati, where did it start at? In Bavaria, okay, and, in Europe. These are Europeans who were taking stuff, corrupting stuff that they took from what is called the Pythagorean order. These were the Greeks, and how this information was taken up out of Africa, taken out of Kemet, and spread through the Western world, and it was corrupted. And we see that corruption, but we see concepts in it in the various religions, whether that be Judaism, Christianity, Islam, Buddhism, Christian. We can see these many ideas that came from the fallopian tube. So Africa gave birth to the whole spiritual system, but these spiritual systems have been corrupted. Keep in mind that all anthropological evidence has validated Africa gave birth, to the world. So one thing they don't want to acknowledge is civilization, spiritual ideas that also became religion today.
Indeed. Now, speaking of these corrupted systems that exist today,
look what they did to us. I mean, brother. I mean,
yeah.
They say we kidnapped from Africa. All right, are we practicing the same moral systems that we were when we were on the African continent as we are today?
Not at all, man.
Look how we contaminated today, my brother.
Yeah.
I mean, killing each other, calling each other all kind of decadent names. I mean, this is all due to what we have been inflicted through the Ma'afa of kidnapping us from the African continent.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I stopped. I'm sorry I interrupted you there, brother.
No, it's all good. You had to get that out. I appreciate it. I was just going to ask, speaking of the corrupted systems, how do you feel? There's people that are stuck in their ways. You know, sometimes they say you can't teach an old dog new tricks, and they hear everything he's saying, Brother Kwesi, but they're not leaving their Christianity alone. And they may tell you, Brother Kwesi, they may say, listen, I'm into Christianity, and this makes me a better person. How do you feel about people that, you know, practice these systems despite it being corrupted, but at the same time they feel as though it makes them a better person? Do you think that's, you know, is that acceptable?
Well, I'm not, I don't come for people to believe in what I'm saying, but only think about what I'm saying. Nor am I coming to say, okay, now, for them to leave their whatever they believe in just because I came to do a lecture or bring the information. I come for people to think and have their own critical analytical analysis. And above all, you're not going to save everybody anyway. So that's the number one thing, okay? But there are those who want to know. Some of us are born, Brother Rich, and we have believed everything we've been told. And then there are those of us who are born and want to know that which has not been told. I fall in the latter, and there are many who want to know that which has not been told. There are many who understand how we've been kidnapped and brutalized and murdered, by these Europeans in this vicious system of white supremacy. So for those who want to know that we are deeply spiritual people, and we have to, now above all, we have to get out of white idolatry. All right? What I mean by white idolatry, worshiping white images. That's spiritual enslavement. That's when the enemy becomes the deity in the spiritual subconscious of our mind. Now, of course, the older people, yes, they're going to have a hard time with this. Peace be upon my mother. She came to my lectures and lecturing on the Bible and Christianity and the various lectures that I do. And after the lecture, she didn't say nothing. I didn't say nothing. I didn't badger her. I grew up with a white Jesus in the house. She had white figurines, white Jesus on the wall and so forth. But what happened, Brother Rich, is that one day I came home, and she got rid of all the white images, all the white figurines that I grew up with, the white Jesus on the wall. She took all that stuff down, and she put up a black Jesus and black figurines. Now, I didn't tell her it was about Haru and the original story of this, but now she's relating to it how she understands it, and how she's understanding it is through her own black divinity. And so I can accept that. So even if those who are dealing with a black divinity, if they can deal with the black spiritual divinity, and above all, black deity or God, then I can deal with that. Okay? Then for those who want to get into the deeper spiritual understandings of where this came from, then we can go further. So my mother, peace be upon her, who made her transition, she was able to leave this physical world and go into that next world with her black divinity intact. All right? So some of us still leave here worshiping white images, white idolatry, okay? Worshiping and deifying the enemy as the deity, okay, the white idolatry. So this is where I look at it, how I look at it. Now, young people, yes, we got to come straight forward. Their minds are fresh, okay? We're going to bring the information directly to them. We're going to bring that spiritual science to them straightforward. But we understand that the older people, yes, they have come set in their ways, but as long as they can deal with a black divinity, okay, because it's that black divinity and understanding that Christ, as I told my mother, that spiritual idea Christ had nothing to do with no man. It was a spiritual development. On the ancient temples of Kemet, it was a symbol for the Ka, 2 arms up. It was the African Gnostics that the Romans exterminated, okay, persecuted and exterminated. We talk about the Christians killed in the amphitheaters, all right? They don't talk about the amphitheaters in Egypt, who the Gnostics, who were the conduit of the ancient Kemetic spiritual system, and during that day with the Romans feared them because the Gnostics understood what the spirituality was all about. It came from the Ka. It came from a spiritual representation, a spiritual development, but the Romans were bringing this Christ image, okay, a white God, referred to as Serapis by the Ptolemies, who brought this on in the creation of the Nicene Conference in 325 A.D., as well as other ecumenical conferences in the formulation of the European Western version of Christianity. So this is what we have to understand. We have lost chronology of events and what took place. And what happened, we got caught in the dogma, Brother Rich. And in that dogma, that's where the belief system. We were taught to believe that this is what we had to believe because this was the Word of God. The Bible was the infallible Word of God. This was the kind of sickness that our people was brought on our people. All right. It's only until now that we have to go back and see where these things were taken from ancient Africa, right there in Kemet. One has to ask, why were the first Bibles written in Egypt? There's where the Greeks plundered the temples. The Ptolemies, as I said before, with Alexander coming in and got Aristotle. There they studied from these ancient papyruses. That's why you see the Torah in 500 B.C., written in Egypt. You saw the Septuagint version of the Bible in 250 B.C., written in Egypt. All right, so coming on down to the Koine version, these are developments of the various Bibles. Coming all the way down to the King James version in 1611 A.D., and King James at that time rebelled against the Pope of Rome. During the time of the Pope of Rome, they had the Latin Vulgate version of the Bible. But the reason why the King James wrote that Bible, because of us, because he wanted in on the slave trade, Brother Rich. So the Pope told England that only Portugal and Spain could get in on the slave trade because the Pope didn't want a lot of the money going to the other European powers. And King James said later for Rome, we'll write our own Bible. And that became the King James version of the Bible because the Pope didn't want England in on the slave trade. So again, this is the importance of understanding history. We're either going to become mentally free, or we're going to become mental slaves in this white supremacy system for eternity. So we've only been out of slavery 153 years, Brother Rich. So now it's time for the emancipation of our mind now. That's the final stage of that emancipation. And of all people, we of all people should ask questions if nobody else asks any questions. So over the years, Dr. Ben has lectured on these various topics, and that's what inspired me. So equally over the years, I'm lecturing on these topics. I think the last time we were there, we were dealing with Christianity. This time I'm dealing with African history and spirituality, the origin of the Bible and the Quran. So I think, again, it's not for people to believe in what I'm saying, but to think about. After all, I'm coming with the visual research from my field research, the visual documentation, to see where many of these ideas came directly from African people. After all, everybody's benefiting from it but us. Europeans over there still plundering temples, as you just opened up with, copying ideas and things in the making of their various religions. It's still going on today in the rewriting of the Bible. A lot of this stuff is all corruption, the things that they've taken up out of Kemet, Brother Rich.
Indeed, my brother. I want to ask you about a recent event. Now, you mentioned the name, the Pope several times. What do you think about the Pope recently bowing down and kissing the feet of the Sudanese leaders? What was that about, my brother?
Well, that was recently. I'm sorry, I missed that. I've been spending time with my grandchildren, so I just came back from Dallas. So I missed that one. But again, we can't be fooled by that. All right. So again, the Pope bows down in the Vatican and kisses the feet of the Black Madonna. Right. So the question is, why does the Pope bow down and kiss the feet of the Black Madonna that they have in the Vatican? All right, because that Black Madonna is a set. All right, as I said before, when the Romans, after the Romans, it became the Byzantine Romans. All right, but before the Byzantine Romans, it was the Romans and the Greeks who worshipped a set as Isis. It was the Romans who took her throughout their empire, through Gaul, which is now called France, Britannia, that is now called Britain, Germania, that is now called Germany. That's why when you go to Europe, you see this Black Madonna throughout Europe. All right, even though they say, well, she's black because the candle has been burning over the years. No, it's black because that is a set. But when the religion tanked, when Theodosius in the 4th century A.D. and Justinian in the 6th century A.D. and the making of Catholicism around 380 A.D., this is where the Black Madonna, she still remained black, but they called her Mary instead of Isis. But even Mary is a Kemetic word that means Murray, that means love. So even the name Mary was taken out of the Medu Neter, the sacred language of God, as our ancestors called it, in the making of Mary. So the Pope bowing down, worshiping the Black Madonna, he's bowing down, worshiping the beginning of the religion that came from the Black Madonna, the Theotokos, the Holy Mother of ancient Kemet. It came up out of Africa. So when I look, so you by mentioning the Senegalese, bowing down to them, symbolically, I have to take it all the way back and bow it down to the Holy Mother, the Black Mother, and that is a set.
Indeed, indeed.
And even with the Notre Dame, the burning of the Notre Dame recently, So we got a question, was the Black Madonna, because that was the big thing in the Notre Dame,
Right.
was the huge picture of the Black Madonna, they had there. They would have the clergy of the French church and a procession that would carry that Black Madonna out of the Notre Dame in a procession. Now, the reason why they did that, because deep down in the Ta-Nehisi, or what is now called Nubia today, there in ancient Kemet, the Kari head priests, they would carry a set, from her Ankh Manu, or what is known as the Holies of Holies, out from her temple, that procession. So she was the Black Madonna. That's why they did that. Let's also remember that Dr. Cheikh Diop equally said that even we know that the temple in Nubia, here deep in the Nubia, the temple of Aset was called Per Aset, and the Greeks who called it Per Isis. So even Paris got its name, Paris, from Per Isis or Per Aset, the house of Aset. That's why the Notre Dame architectural structure is modeled off of the Black Madonna Aset's temple right there that I take our groups every year. And there I showed them where Theodosius and Justinian did everything trying to chisel out the Black Madonna. But you can still see the relief of her lactating the Holy Child, Haru, who was born of a holy birth and immaculate conception. So this is the power and why the church, the biggest fear of the Western church was ancient Kemet. And that's why they did everything and shut these temples down. So in the turn of the century, these temples were dug out to make tourist dollars, dug out of sand to make tourist dollars, but not to tell the truth, because after the Byzantine Romans came in, that's when they closed all the temples down. And at time took them over, and they were covered in sand. And even though we see the temples are dug out, but still many of these tours that go over there, they're not talking about or revealing a lot of the reliefs and things that I'm talking about. But this is the importance of us dealing with this, because this is where we see the spiritual system to validate where these things were literally stolen from ancient Africa, from the books in stone.
You know, some people feel as though the spirituality, the form of spirituality and the system that the ancient Kemites had in place was to put that in the wrong hands can be very dangerous. So some people feel as though
it can be very dangerous.
Yes, so
it can be more dangerous than a white Jesus, my brother. Looking at you every day that you play, looking at it as the Son of God.
So
how in the world are they going to think Kemet can be very dangerous?
So what they do is they say, let's reserve it for secret societies. Let's reserve it for the people who deserve it, not for the masses, because the masses could take this and do something that, something dangerous with it. What do you think about people who feel as though this should be reserved for this type of information just for secret societies? Like Freemasonry.
Secret societies?
Yeah, like
secret societies and Freemasonry developed from ancient Kemet. It took many ideas, from ancient Kemet. You look at the dollar bill. The dollar bill, you see the eagle on it. That is Haru. You got a pyramid on the dollar bill. They don't have a cross. It's supposed to be a Christian nation. They don't have a cross. Or they don't have the Mogan Da'u on the. Well, they do have the Mogan Da'u above the eagle's head. All right. But you got a pyramid on there, So again, they're acknowledging ancient Kemet. So that was the secret. The secret society was based off of the secret where they stole the information from ancient Africa. That is the secret when we talk about the secret. So what I'm saying that when you look at us as an African people, well, our story, everything about us, our history and culture and everything was pretty much wiped out. We know totally oblivious to many things that goes back to ancient African civilization and spiritual systems. So again, to break white idolatry and break the enemy as the deity, we can see the Kemet and see where they stole these things from, because we are taught, Brother Rich, that the Bible and these things were the infallible word of God, that were in fact these were scribes who copied and plagiarized from papyruses in the making of their vellum and their codex and parchment which they wrote on. All right. So once the people were able to see it, it breaks that. Right now, many of our people, are caught up in they're going to burn in hell, in purgatory and all these types of things if they don't give up the money, all right, and all this kind of stuff. And then we see the dilapidation of our communities when we see many of these preachers have pimped our communities based off of this kind of madness. So this is the importance of understanding where these ideas came from, but above all, to show that ancient Kemet dealt with a deep, deep spiritual system that was based off of the natural spiritual laws that developed that ancient African spirituality, which is Matnechet. and Netchet is Mother Nature itself. All right? So again, this is what we have to go back to. When we look at the creation story and we look at these ideas of Genesis and all these kind of things, I'm going to England next month. I'll always make sure I stop by the British Museum to visit our ancestors that were kidnapped and stolen and put in those colossals in the museum just like us. And there's a stone there called the Memphite Theology Stone. And thousands of Europeans go by there. Many people don't stop to look at this stone, but this Memphite Theology Stone that was found by Shabaka, I think it was in a leather papyrus-type form at that time, but he carved it in stone of the creation of the world. And here we see Ptah, monotheism, one God creating the universe. This is development of Genesis and these ideas and how they came about. This is important for our people to understand this. So that breaks that whole idea of brainwashing our people that the Bible is the infallible Word of God, when in fact this is a corruption of the ancient spiritual system that took countless thousands of years to develop. When we look at these ideas of Adam and Eve and the world was created 6,000 years ago, Brother Rich, okay, now they validated through anthropology that adulthood is 160,000 years old, making him 154,000 years older than the biblical Adam. Even though James Usher said the world was created October 22nd at 9 o'clock a.m. at 4000 BCE. Well, he copied that from the Memphite Theology Stone. Don't you think that's important to know?
Mm.
See, so when we go to these cemetery schools, which they call seminary schools, which many black ministers who go into, these things are not taught to them, all right? And even though there's science of mitochondrial DNA, okay, have validated that African people were the first people, again, we can see a lot of their own sciences is even backing a lot of the things that the ancient spiritual system of ancient Kemet was all about, based off of what? A spiritual goddess. So even their mitochondrial system is now even saying that everything's coming from a woman. Well, Kemet's whole system was based off of a spiritual foundation of a goddess. Because they said it could not, for there to be a god, it must be a goddess, and for there to be a goddess, it must be a god. So when it says in Genesis, let us make man in our own image, I've been questioning this us for a long time. Mm-hmm. So, we only look at it from the masculine point of view and not that spiritual laws of opposites that our ancestors talked about. So, these are some of the things that I'm going to talk about, the Bible and the origin of the Bible and many of the historical ideas. And above all, that's backed up through the field research, as I said before, and the reliefs and the monuments. And again, I didn't get this overnight. I didn't know this. It took me almost 4 decades to learn this, Brother Rich. So we have a certain amount of time to be here. Either we're going to be here caught in foolishness, or we're going to benefit from our time of being here. So that's the importance of having this communiversity that Nesu King Simon is putting on. These communiversities, because it's communiversities like this is going to educate to liberate our people. We can't expect this to get this in the white cemeteries or seminary schools or the European universities and all these different places. So it's forums like this that we come out only for our people to think, to use that cerebral organ called the brain. And through that comparative analytical analysis, we can see where these ideas came from. Where many of the patriarchs that we see from the biblical account, okay, even though in Kemet there's no validation of Abraham and Moses and all these different characters, but when we look at the history of Kemet and see that Neb-Peri-Ra Admos I, yes, this is a real personality who opened up the 18th dynasty. This is the only story of an expulsion of a large group of people out of Kemet, and that were the Hyksos invaders. And even a European Jewish historian who lived around 37 to 100 AD, they say they took from Admos and made the Moses. So when we look at the history of ancient Kemet, we can see the personalities, okay, that were developed in the Bible. These patriarchs were all developed from the ancient personalities of ancient Kemet, who are real people, not mythical people. So these are some of the things that we want to look at, I know we have these holidays that you mentioned earlier that come up, and we just fall right in suit. Most of them are about picking up the gross national product, or not about telling the truth. So again, this is information that is critical at this time, critical to save some of as many people as we can. Of course, we're not going to be able to save all of our people, okay, from white idolatry and the white supremacy system where they have circumscribed their circumference to think within their diameter. And as long as we're thinking within their diameter of 2,000 years, Brother Rich, then we are mental slaves. All right? African people have been on this planet for thousands, if not millions of years. How can we be locked down with a diameter of 2,000 years plus time period?
Mm. Wow. What can we look forward to this Sunday, brother?
Well, as I said before, I'm coming with the origin of the Bible and the Quran. Last time we were at the store. Is that right?
Yes.
I think I dealt with the. No. Last time I was dealing with Chris. We were. In fact, that was a few days before Christmas, a couple of years ago. I dealt with Christianity. So this time I'm dealing with the African origin of the Bible. We can't do everything all in one night, of course. But that's the topic that I'm dealing with: African history and spirituality, the origin of the Bible and the Quran, to see where many of these ideas that we know came up out of ancient Africa. So these are some of the things that we're going to look at. We're going to have visual documentation to see where the development of these various religions were based off of ancient African spirituality. So again, ideas that we see even in the Quran when we look in the Hadith. In the Hadith, we see that Jibril, now Jibril within the Bible would be called Gabriel. And so here we see that Jibril, according to the Hadith, wrote the Quran. So now we have to go back to ancient Kemet, and we have to look at Tahuti. Now Tahuti, it is said Tahuti wrote the Per Emaru. Now I know many of us may or may not have heard of the Per Emaru, but it means coming forth by day and by night. And the Europeans call it the Book of the Dead because when the Europeans were coming in plundering the tombs, our ancestors had the Per Emaru. This is based off of their salvation and going into the Hall of Ma'at, into the spiritual realm that we refer to as heaven today. So by robbing the tombs, they called it the Book of the Dead. But here it was Tahuti that wrote the Per Emaru. Now here we look at Tahuti and we can see that they took from Tahuti and made Gabriel, that later became Jibril, okay, whether we're looking at the Quran. We also see that it was Tahuti that gave the call that a set was going to have a virgin birth and immaculate conception. That's called Gabriel in the Bible. When we look at the personalities in the Bible, like Adam and Eve, they're also spoken of in the Quran as well. It's the same exact story. Whether we're looking at Cain and Abel, called Gabil and Habil in the Quran, whether we're looking at Noah, it's called Nu in the Quran, or Abraham is called Ibrahim in the Quran, and so on and so on. These various patriarchs are the same people, whether in the Bible it's Solomon or Salahim in the Quran, or whether it's Moses or Musa in the Quran. So when we look at that and see the making of the Quran is equally based off of the Old Testament patriarchs. So when we follow the stories of the Old Testament patriarchs and see that their stories are coming from ancient Kemet, okay, whether that's, if we're looking at Abraham, who we're told is supposed to have been the first Hebrew, or we're looking at Abraham, who is the one who did the circumcision. Well, let's go to Ankh-Mahor. And here we see that circumcision was already known, a rites of initiation into manhood in the ancient Kemet, long before there was an Abraham. So again, this is carved in stone. There you see the circumcision taking place long before there was a Genesis chapter 17, verse 11, where they talk about, and ye shall circumcise the flesh of your foreskin. This was already known in ancient Kemet. So where are these stories coming from? Where are these scribes? That's who's writing the Bible. These Hebrew scribes are writing the Bible in Alexandria, Egypt, because these papyruses, they were able to study them. These papyruses, it took thousands of years for the Kemetians to develop this spiritual system. That's how we see the same exact story. Whether we're looking at Adam and Eve, long before there was an Adam and Eve story, or Hebrew story of Adam and Eve, it was a Sar and a Set. That was the creation of, and the Zep-Tepi, as it was called in Kemet. There was no story that a rib was taken from a Sar to make a Set, because earlier as we talked about the laws of Ma'at, okay, and the moral law of ancient Kemet was based off of what? That moral law was based off of spiritual balance. So you did not have one who was created before the other. They were created simultaneously. There was no misogyny in Kemet where a Set was taken from the rib of a Sar. There was no story because they became aware of their sexuality. That was the reason for the world's sins, like this Pandora box that the Greeks referred to it, or whether it's referring to the story that because Eve became aware of her sexuality by eating from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, and God seduced Adam to eat this Viagra apple, then they had sex, and that's the reason for the world's sins. And then, of course, we're told that her menstrual cycle is to remind her of that sin. So this is a sick misogynist scribe that wrote that. All right? Now, what woman in her right mind would accept this type of story? But this is what people have been taught to believe, Brother Rich.
Well, I definitely look forward to seeing you this Sunday, my brother. Once again, family, the brother Ashra Kwesi, along with the sister Shahrazad Ali, will be in Harlem, National Black Theater. That is Sunday, April 28th. This is a King Simon production. For more information, you could call 347-496-1022. The doors open up at 2 p.m. for the live stream. And by the way, only Sister Shahrazad Ali lecture will be live streamed. So if you want to see the brother Ashra Kwesi, you have to be there in person. But for the live stream, go to usalivestream.com. Brother, I want to thank you once again for coming on the show, my brother. I didn't know you've been doing this for 38 years, brother. That's absolutely magnificent, man.
Yes, sir. Yeah, for a long, long time, for 38 years. Doesn't seem like it to me, but it's been 38 years now.
Indeed, man. So, and for you to still have the amount of energy and that you have, and the way you speak, the passion that you have when you speak, that's absolutely amazing, man. That's something that.
Well, you know, when you've been there and you've seen it, my brother, you become a part of it. You see what's there. You know, it's not something you're. As Dr. Ben always said, don't become an armchair scholar.
Right.
You know. So again, when I'm talking about a lot of these things that I'm talking about, I'm literally mentally walking through the books in stone. I'm thinking about the release. I'm thinking about all the different places, and excited to reveal this to other brothers and sisters again, to make them think, because we all have a genius within us, Brother Rich.
Indeed.
And all we have to do is, peace be upon him, was Dr. Richard King, who wrote his book, The African Origin of Biological Psychiatry, is to open up an African ancestral genetic memory bank. That's what we have. That's the fear, is the unlocking of an African ancestral genetic memory bank. Everything that has happened for thousands of years is still in us. But when you take and create a self-hatred of ourselves and our ancestral knowledge and our ancestral spiritual system, then that ancestral doorway becomes locked up. So when you look at the aftermath, is how you see us today as a people, all right, is the fact that we have the self-hatred of ourselves is due to the fact that that ancestral genetic memory bank is locked up. So this is about the unlocking of that genetic memory bank. And as I always say, Brother Rich, that we are the last people that should be fighting among ourselves, whether we are Hebrew, Christian, or Muslim, or Buddha, or Krishna, because without African people, none of it exists in the first place.
Right.
And yes, there were African Hebrews. I'm going to talk about that, okay, but that's not the beginning of the story. Dr. Ben, his background is Beta Israel.
Right.
All right. He was his background is known in Ethiopia today. In fact, we go every winter. It's Falasha. All right, but that's not the beginning of the story. All right. So when we look at the story, we have to look at it from the beginning. As I said, we have lost a chronology of time, and once we go all the way back and then come up, then we can start to piece the story together. As I always say, it's like putting a mirror up to your face. You can see your face, but when someone knocks that mirror on the ground and it breaks up into many pieces, then we have to start to reconstruct that piece. We can't pick up one piece and think that we have the piece. You might have the eye in the broken glass syndrome, okay? That means you might only be able to see your eye, but it takes many of us to pick those pieces. I don't have all the answers, nor do I have all the pieces, Brother Rich. I have a very small piece of the piece, but above all, to start these pieces and reconstructing these pieces, it must start with us as an African people first.
Indeed. Well, I look forward to seeing you on Sunday, my brother. I definitely do.
Yes, sir, Brother Richard. Look forward to another Communiversity, and I want to thank you, brother, for your radio shows. Things like this here and the creativity of having radio shows and Communiversities to educate, to liberate, that's what's going to make this happen. So we want to thank you for having your radio show. You definitely have a major piece to that broken glass that I was talking about.
Indeed. I like that. I love that analogy, my brother. I definitely do. All right,
Yes,
family.
sir.
I want to thank you for tuning in. Thank Brother Ashra Kwesi for coming on. We're going to see you next time, family. We'll see you Sunday, matter of fact. Peace.
Hotel.
All right, family. Just got off the line with brother Ashra Kwesi. About to get out of here. Gonna play these ads for the family. Make sure you support these brothers and sisters with these black businesses. I think there's a good documentary coming on. I seen Blue Pill post something about black entrepreneurs way back in the day, like during segregation or something like that. Damn, I think it was on PBS or something like that. I'm gonna see if I could catch it right now. What time is this? 9:50. Yeah, I'm gonna see if I could catch it. But yeah, I hope y'all enjoyed the show with the brother right there. Make sure you in the building if you're in New York or if you're coming into town this Sunday. It's gonna be off the hook. And besides that, I know King Simon was in the chat. Shout out to King Simon for putting this together. This is a good one right here. Yeah, if you arrive late, you could rewind it. Don't worry about it. You could definitely rewind it if you arrive late. But besides that, I'm about to get out. Oh, make sure you support, family. All y'all in the chat, make sure your support via Cash App. Best way to show support so we can keep independent media like this going on is very important. We're not going to get this in mainstream media. So thanks for tuning in. Thanks for your support, family. This is Brother Rich, Underground Railroad Productions, Black Magic 363, and I'm signing out. Peace.